Hello and welcome to a special program on NewsX powered by Dafa News. India secured a top spot in the World Cup final, defeating New Zealand by 70 runs in a thrilling semi-final at Mumbai's iconic Wankhede Stadium. This marks India's fourth appearance in the final. Remember the 1983, 2003, 2011 and now 2023. Opting to bat first, India posted an impressive 397 for 4 in 50 overs. Virat Kohli, the King Kohli, 50th ODI century, and Shreyas Iyer's 105 were crucial in response. The New Zealand managed to get 327 runs, not bad considering they were playing the second innings. In 48.5 overs, with Daryl Mitchell scoring 134, Mohammad Shami's 7-wicket haul earned him the man of the match, much deserved. Kohli's century broke Sachin Tendulkar's ODI century record. His 711 runs in the tournament. I'm not sure if I believe what I'm reading. 711 runs in the tournament and still one game to go. Including 3 centuries, 5 half-centuries made him the leading run scorer, surpassing Tendulkar's 673 runs in 2003. Kohli now has 50 ODI centuries, becoming the second best batsman after Tendulkar to achieve this international. I think we should stop counting records the way it is going. Well, we have 3 of the eminent guests joined with us. From Australia, we have Paul Dinette. From England, we have David Brooks, our man in charge for past month and a half, and Tasmin Granger, the lady who's played for 15 years for Zimbabwe. I'd like to go on to David first before we go on to Paul and understand what the match holds for today. David, what are the adjectives you want to use for last night's game?
That's an interesting one. I mean, it's obviously historic in so many different ways. The adjective I would use would be, in the end, an accomplished victory. I mean, it's a game that India had to win. There was a moment, quite a few moments, I think, in the New Zealand innings in that third wicket where everything went very quiet at Wankhede Stadium. You could have heard a pin drop. So it wasn't a straightforward win.
Right.
It was a little taste of mortality along the way. But by the end, obviously, it was a celebration all round. And yes, I don't know where Tasmin's going to start or end the records, because there were so many records.
17, to stand correct, 17 last night.
17 records. And I would just like to say to all those people in India who were calling for Virat Kohli's career to be over a couple of years ago, just to take a look at themselves today and appreciate a man who's done more for India cricket than anyone in ODI cricket in its history.
Absolutely. Paul, my friend, the podcaster, the cricket journalist, and a well-known critic of the game. Paul, what did you see? How did you feel when you were seeing the images last night, Virat Kohli bat? Your views. And India win.
G'day, everyone. Look, I suppose I had 2 views. Number one, it was amazing the way that India played, because New Zealand played really well. On a different occasion, New Zealand would have won. They played a spirited game, great fight back in the second innings. I'd been going on about how difficult it was to bat at night, and New Zealand kind of put a lie to that. I mean, that was a very impressive performance, yet they still got absolutely beaten by, in the end, a large margin by India. It was a wonderful seeing Virat Kohli scoring the 100 with Sachin Tendulkar, David Beckham in the stadium. It was just a superb moment. I suppose the only concern I've got is just that I was disappointed, I must say, beforehand to hear about how the Indian team management were responsible for the pitch being changed, and that the ICC independent pitch observer was caught by surprise. And the ICC released a statement saying that he was apprised of it, but it should be him making the decision, not the home board. And I'd say that India are so good, I don't see the need to do that. An Australian put it on there on Twitter saying it would be like Michael Phelps challenging you to a swimming race and then also saying, oh, and by the way, you have to wear a straitjacket as well. You don't need to do that. You're Michael Phelps. You know, you're the best in the world by a million miles.
Yes, very nice. Well, I'm very surprised you to make that point, which no other critic has made. I've read it on Twitter and other social media, that you must give credit to New Zealand because they've put on 327 spirited. Even that's a record. in its own self and in its own right with the way the Indian bowling was happening, the crowds, the Beckham, the Sachins. I think that calls for at least an acknowledgement, if not a standing ovation. Your views?
Yeah, I think it's a reflection of just how well India played. As I said, that New Zealand played spectacularly well and ultimately got beaten by a very, very large margin. It would be interesting to be able to perform a split A/B test analysis and have a rewind history and see what would have happened if New Zealand had batted first on that pitch and how things would have transpired. It might have been a closer game. But as things stand, we talked about it, I think it was yesterday, that I think India is once again making an exclamation mark on the point that they are right up there with the Australian side of the early 2000s, the West Indies side of the 1970s as the best World Cup side ever. Can they cap it all off against either South Africa or Australia on Sunday?
Absolutely. But before we go on to the Australia-India match on Sunday, I'd like to ask David Brooks. David, what do you think of Shami, the bowler? Shami, the man who's out to prove a point. Shami, one of perhaps the greatest Indian bowler.
Well, New Zealand were threatening, as Paul was saying, and one man pegged them back, and that was Mohammed Shami. Yes, he dropped a catch. Can you imagine if that was his only contribution to the game yesterday, how everyone would be on his back now? But no, yet again he stood up and taken another wicket haul. This time 7 wickets. 7 wickets for Mohammed Shami. Every time he took the ball, he got a breakthrough. When he was required to break up that 3rd wicket partnership, who broke the partnership? Mohammed Shami. And yet I know that he's another player whose place in the team is far from guaranteed. He's the first one to be given the shove when things are don't go well, or even when things do go well, he's left out, as he was for the first 4 games of this tournament. That was his 3rd 5-wicket haul, a 7-wicket bag, which puts him right up there. In fact, he's got to be better than Glenn McGrath, because when Glenn McGrath got his 7 wickets for Australia, it was against Namibia. So Shami's done it against New Zealand.
That's a very interesting point you make, David. Against Namibia or against the semi-final at the biggest stage in the world. And perhaps it was one of the most viewed match in the history of cricket online.
Can you imagine how he would have felt? He just dropped a sitter at mid-off. And he's given the ball and was tasked with making that breakthrough. I mean, he had to stand up and deliver. He ran in like a horse, as his bowling coach said, like a racehorse.
Absolutely.
And a superb display of fast bowling. He had the ball on a string. He could do what he wanted with it.
Absolutely. I think it's a script. I think it's a script that all the Indian batters, bowlers are writing it, minus the fielding part, of course. Tasneem, we'll have to quickly shift our focus to today's match, which is head-to-head, what you see on your screen right now, how many matches they've played, and get a very well-known South African journalist on the show right now. But you give us the head-to-head records.
Yes, definitely. So currently, obviously, South Africa versus Australia, this is one game in its own that just has its own history as well. Head-to-head currently, South Africa leading on the ODI front by just 5 games. That's 55 to the 50 of Australia. But one thing you must take into consideration is Australia is the Mohammed Shami of South Africa, the stone in the boot of them that constantly keeps terrorizing them at the semi-final stage. It's happened on numerous occasions, most probably for them as well. And they'd just be looking as well just to get over the title, the name that's been put above their heads as well. I will not mention it because, like we've been saying time and time again, if anything this World Cup has shown us is that history does have an essence to it,
Absolutely.
But it plays no part. I'll make you guys just take you back and remind you yesterday that I said to you, New Zealand versus India has been that match where New Zealand has always overcome India. But at this stage, you currently have India sitting on the top. Yes, courtesy to Mohammed Shami as well. What brilliant bowling from him, and so you never know where the South Africa-Australia game might lead to as well today, taking into consideration that this is a fairly young squad. A lot of players from previous World Cups have been changed out as well in this game today.
Well, absolutely. Where it goes, let's get in a while. It's very difficult to pronounce his name, but I'll still try. Avile Savula, the sports journalist from South Africa. Did I get it right?
Close enough.
Savula. How crucial is the performance of South Africa's batting bowling in units for the semi-final? Because you're up against one of the biggest team in the history of cricket. Your views, Sabula?
Well, obviously, it's going to be very important for South Africa to fire in all cylinders in the semi-final against Australia.
Right.
I mean, the bowling attack in particular needs to come to the party. I think we saw against Afghanistan in their previous match that the bowling attack really struggled to get going. And then, obviously, the batting lineup has been, the stars to talk about in this World Cup, in particular for South Africa. So they'll also need to step up. I mean, it's probably the biggest game in those players' careers in the past 4 years. So it's going to be a very important game. It's going to be a very tight match, and those two departments need to work in cohesion if South Africa are to win against Australia and make it through to the final to face India.
Very interesting. What factors contributed to South Africa's success in the recent ODI series against Australia, which recently concluded? Your views?
Well, look, that series obviously started in a very sketchy manner for South Africa, if I can put it that way. They started out losing those two ODI matches, and then they came back. The conditions obviously played a massive role, but just the fight in that South African side in those last three ODIs to come back and to win the series 3-2 just showed that they had the grit. A lot of people ruled them out. They were getting scrutiny from media, but they just kept going. And they had that dogfight in them, and I think that's going to also be crucial in this semi-final against Australia. It's going to be needed. Just that dogfight and that resilience to come back no matter what the situation is.
Well, this is to David Brooks. David, you have a very colorful light behind your back. We can't see you enough, but I'll still toss this question to you. Semi-finals, South Africa's don't go together. They've been considered as chokers. Do you think this is the time to rewrite history, considering India defeated New Zealand after 3 unsuccessful attempts? Your views?
I think that it depends on the toss of the coin today. I really do. If South Africa bat first, the opportunities to choke are not as strong, and the pressure will not be on them. Their batting has been superb in this tournament, much more impressive. I think even Paul would acknowledge this, than the Australian top 6. The South African top 6 has been more consistent and more impressive than the Australian top 6. So if South Africa bat first today, I think they'll win. I think they'll score big. I haven't seen anything from Australia on the bowling front. That's really frightening.
Right.
They've got great bowlers. Yes, Josh Hazlewood, Pat Cummins, but somehow they haven't been on top form.
Right.
And they have to make up the numbers. They're always struggling to score us a few overs, etc. So there's plenty of weaker bowlers to attack. So South Africa bat first, they win. If Australia bat first, then it really depends on how they negotiate those opening overs, and then the crucial middle stage. I would put my potential player to watch today as Maharaj. I think he's bowled brilliantly for South Africa.
Absolutely.
He's been taking valuable wickets.
David,
if he comes in 2 or 3 wickets and keeps it tight, I think South Africa could still win. So my money's.
That's the Englishman talking to an Aussie right now. Do you think? Let me get Paul Dinette here in this discussion. Paul, would you agree to what your friend from England has been talking about in Australian batting and the chinks in the armour? Do you think? Would you agree?
Yeah, by and large, I think I agree with him. And I can't pick a winner today. I think it's 50-50. I think that the history of it's interesting. I don't think it plays any part. I think that you look at each of the times that South Africa have been eliminated in heartbreaking circumstances. It's just one of these things. I don't buy into the notion that that they are a team that chokes or anything like that. I just don't think that's true. So I think that the game is very hard to predict. I agree. It's in both teams' best advantage to bat first.
Right.
And I think that Australia really does have a problem, as David said, that especially Stark and Cummins have not been taking wickets early on. Hazlewood at least has been super economical. But I would actually be inclined to consider dropping Stark today. That's not going to happen, and no doubt he'll take 5 wickets.
Isn't that a very big statement to make? Drop Stark. Wasn't he your successful bowler?
It's a very big statement to make, and it's very easy to make it from my couch here when I don't actually have any responsibility. But in seriousness, he's a fantastic bowler, and as I said, he may well prove me wrong, and I hope he does. I'd love nothing more than for him to be man of the match tonight. But I just think throughout this tournament, he hasn't got it to swing. He has gone the journey a little bit. I'd be looking elsewhere, but there's 0% chance of that happening, so it's almost silly to talk about.
Well, absolutely. Tasneem, this show is all about stats, figures, head-to-head, everything from first over to the 10th over till the 50th over. Tasneem, what do we have different today?
So I'm just going to let you know that South Africa and Australia, courtesy to a win by South Africa in the league matches earlier on, currently sit at a 3-match tie between the two of them on the World Cup stage. So someone looking to get ahead of the other here today. As well as something to take into consideration is South Africa this World Cup is one of the only teams that currently hosts 4 300-plus scores, including the current tournament high of 428 runs for the loss of 5. This coming against Sri Lanka earlier on in the league games. Second thing for you to take into consideration, I'm definitely here with David on this one. Keshal Maharaj might be a big player for them today. It'd be interesting to see if they give Tabir Shamsi as well a chance to have a bowl, because you should take into consideration that this is another black soil pitch at Eden Gardens today. That means it will offer good purchase for spin bowlers. Maybe a bit of bounce for the seamers, but definitely sluggish.
Just hold on to that thought. I'd like to come to you, Tasneem, again. Explain our fans, our viewers, the red soil and the black soil and the difference. Since you've played the game, and you know playing in Indian conditions on the soil. Quickly.
Definitely. So black soil pitches tend to be a lot more, they give a lot more purchase to spin bowlers in the sense that if you got revs on the ball, you'll definitely get some grip and turn off the surface as well. And because they tend to have a slow and sluggish nature, automatically for a spin bowler, it becomes harder for batsmen. They have to work on not just only picking the line, gauging the turn, but as well as trying to pick off the pace of which it's changing
just
from the air
a second,
off the
just
ground.
hold on to that. Paul Dinette, the Aussie, do you like the statement Tasneem is making? The black soil, the black pitch, if you have the rev, it will spin, and it will spin dangerously if you have Adam Zampa in your team, the leading wicket taker. Does that make you feel comfortable? Paul Dinette, I can barely hear you. Oh, we got muted on the most important question here. However, I'll come back to David Brooks. David, do you think having Zampa in the black soil makes a lot of difference?
I'm not a soil expert. I've no idea on that one.
Absolutely. We'll pass it. We'll pass it back to Tasneem before Paul Dinette makes his adjustments with the mic. If he's ready, PCR will let me know. Tasneem, just go on with your theory.
Definitely, I think Adam Zampa can play a big role in this match as well.
I think he's come back. I think Paul is back. Paul, does that make you brilliant and happy and cheerful right early in the morning, according to India time, if you have that?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Go on.
It makes me happy because of Zampa and Travis Head and Glenn Maxwell, but it makes me very nervous about Maharaj and Shamsi. Yeah. As I've said a number of times, just the Australians struggling against spin, the Australian middle order struggling against high quality spin, and I have an enduring nightmare of us batting second. And we'll look fine, we'll look great, nice opening partnership, everything will look sweet, and then all of a sudden the middle order gets exposed.
Absolutely. What's the status on Maxwell? Before we wind up the show with 2 quick comments from Tasneem on her favourite and David Brooks' favourite. Yes, is Maxwell back? Paul Dinette.
Yep. He's ready to go, raring to go. Everyone in the Australian side is fit, so they're going to pick their very best 11. The question is going to be, will they pick Stoinis or will they pick Labuschagne? And I think they're probably edging towards Labuschagne. But with the rain around, maybe that'll change their minds. That's the big thing. I just don't want to.
Thank you, Paul. We'll have you back on our watch along. This is for ladies and gentlemen. Please keep watching Watch Along on Cricket YouTube channel for us, and hear more of the Aussie and the Englishman taking a quick shot at each other. Tasneem, what's your favourite today? What's going to be the key in today's game?
Yeah, very definitely. Quick. I'm pretty sure you guys all know this, but I am with the Proteas today. I'm supporting South Africa in 110% run right now. Key moments for them today will probably to see what they can do with the new ball up front. Definitely have Rabada, maybe Ngidi back in the squad, despite the fact that he hobbled off 2 times already in 2 past matches. As well as, just I think, be the way the coin goes, I hope they win the toss
10,
and they bat
9,
first.
8. What's your final prediction? 5.
I see South Africa scoring 350 plus and taking it to the Aussies today.
Absolutely. David, last comment, 10 seconds, and the countdown begins. Who's your favourite?
I'm with Tasmin, South Africa to score, I think, 400 plus. De Kock and Maharaj to star for South Africa in a historic victory over the Aussies.
Well, that's all we had time for. Thank you, David, for joining from London and disagreeing with Paul Dinet, the Aussie, who's 50-50 today. He doesn't know which way the team is going to win. Tasneem, thank you for your views.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.